I worked at the BBC in my 20s, and it was one of my jobs to edit interviews. And we had this deck, and I had a razor blade, and I used to cut bits of videotape, audio tape. It was
Oh,
just so weird.
I'm that
And
old
then
too,
you,
Janet. We used to splice
yeah,
big
yeah.
sound reels to put our
And
sound
then you
reels together.
sellotape them
So
together. I know, it's
yeah,
madness.
and
And
literally
now,
tape the cutting room floor and all that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
funny.
Okay, thank you so much for this time, Susanna. I really appreciate it. And let's kick off by having a little intro from you. Who are you? Where do you live? What do you do?
Sure. So my name's Suzanna Porowski. That's my married name. And I live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's known for its mountains because we're not far from Banff and Jasper. Hockey, probably, the whole country, but the Edmonton Oilers. And I'm a life coach. I'm a baby coach, as I'm not supposed to say, but I say all the time. And I am an ex-theater performer. I was a choreographer for a few years, a dancer before that, and that was my schooling, and music theater, all disciplines. I actually started as a piano player. My first hotel gig was in Bermuda. I just had to play
Ooh,
piano for a little bit, and we can get into that later. And I have two wonderful children. Growing up, they're both boys, 14 and 18.
ooh.
And yes, so I'm seeing a little bit of the experiment of an empty nester because my 18-year-old got a job all summer. So he comes home tomorrow, but he's been gone. Tomorrow's August 11th, but he's been gone since June. So we've had this little trial run of perhaps one day when he leaves, and I'm fine with it because they're great. They're very accomplished for their age, and they train taekwondo. So do I, for that matter. And my husband Colin. And yeah, that's a bit it. That's about it for now. That's me.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's dive into the drinking story, shall we? When did it all
Yes,
start?
why not?
Huge
So I've been
drinker?
thinking about this. Yes, and I listened. I'm a great fan of your podcast. That's how I first found you, and I would say it's about the same age as a lot of other people because it was 14. So I got into my father's brandy at 14. He was drinking it often, and his life changed dramatically with alcohol as well later on, but for the moment it was still friendly and social. And I saw him drinking this, and I think he offered me my first shot, if I remember correctly, and took it. And then I snuck back and had more. And the next thing, remember, it was the next day, and there were stories of how I'd been put to bed, and it was quite wild. And so I had gotten intoxicated to blackout my first time drinking. And we could talk about that in a bit, but now I see from everything I've learned, that's actually a bad sign, that right away it goes that way, that you want more and you're insatiable. And I remember that feeling of, the lightness, and not for long because I very, very quickly got to blackout, but just how it felt going down my throat, how I was not inhibited, all of that right away from the first time I drank. And then I would drink with friends. It might have even been before the brandy that I'd had some beers, because me and my friend from junior high, we decided it would be a good idea, since she lived close to school, to go home at lunchtime and have a beer. That was the big plan. I think we were in grade 7 or grade 8. So that day she asked her dad, "Are you going to come home for lunch?" And she had never asked him that before. So he got suspicious. And yeah, we got quite wasted on the one beer, or maybe two beers, like one each. I don't remember. And I think there was 3 or 4 of us gals, but something about someone sitting on the stairs. And you know how memory is. It could have even been me. And her dad came home, and yeah, did we ever catch heck? And then that was just a slow progression, because there was not a lot of drinking. But I moved out young. I was in grade 11, and my parents were going through a divorce. The drinking was definitely a player in the divorce. My mom actually, when my father phoned her, and he traveled a lot with his work. He was in the theater. He was a director, actor, what have you. He went where the shows were. And when he was coming back from a gig, he asked her to pick him up from the airport. And she said, "Sure. Where would you like me to drive you?" So that was that. And yeah, he was out. Perhaps he knew it coming leading up to that point. I don't know much. That's what I know of the story. And so my dad was gone. I'm 13, 14, a little older by the time that conversation happened, that he actually left. And for some reason, I got my own apartment in grade 11. I was just craving this independence. And I had started hanging around with that crowd, skipping school with 3 other girls, and also started in me this need to be, we all have it, but I had an obsessive need to be liked. I would compromise who I was 100%. And the ones, if you were aloof to me, ignored me, then you had something I wanted. And I wanted to win you, and I wanted you to like me. So it was people pleasing right from the get-go. And so I would hang around with them. We would go to bars. The drinking age in Edmonton is quite young. It's 18, but that still wasn't young enough for me. We had to be out there at 16, 17, and started skipping school and drinking. I remember even at 16, 17, when we'd go out to the bars, we'd go back to my place. We would drive, and it was all funny. Who drove last night? Oh, you did, Suzanna. Oh, ha. Very not funny. I'm very, very not funny. I'm just so grateful that, on the one hand, that nothing happened, and on the other hand, sometimes you get a wake-up call early, however your life goes, but I never did. And then off to Toronto. I actually left. I was waitressing underage, 17, and the owner of the bar and I were dating. Very inappropriate. He's a lot older than me. And we moved to Toronto. He was a sax player, and he was going to play in a band. And I had these delusions that I was all of a sudden going to be able to have enough material to also play in the band with him. I did play piano fairly well, but I just didn't have the material. So I went with him. He left after 10 days, and I stayed because I felt I had nothing to go back to. And I don't really remember a lot of my feelings. We were partying, so drinking. And I marvel when I read quitlets and listen to guests talking about their drinking, how much they remember. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember anything because I was drinking. The basic movements are there. I was in this city at this time doing this, but I don't really remember. It was just constant, maybe daily. I had a rule. So I went to Club Med as a piano player. I was dancing in Toronto. I was a full-time dancer. I had started dancing when I lived in Edmonton when I was young. But anyway, I took it to a more independent level. I was living with an aunt at one point, my mom's younger sister, who I'm eternally grateful for. She took me and took care of me, and I could pursue my passion of dance. So I was at, if anybody is from Toronto, I was at the George Randolph School of Dance. They will know it. And if they're in the arts. And anyway, we moved over to Metro Movement. I went with a choreographer there. And so I'm dancing a lot. And my sister got a job. She was living in Edmonton at the time, although she had been in Toronto. See, we started in Toronto as a family and moved to Edmonton after grade 7. So me and my older sister, and I have a younger brother and a younger sister, much younger than us. The brother's 2 years younger, but the sister's then 6 years after that. They don't have any memory of Toronto, but my sister and I, we pined for Toronto. It was an idea in our head. It was probably not founded on anything except that we had been uprooted at grade 3 and grade 1 to first Regina, Saskatchewan, and then Edmonton further west. So we always wanted to go back. My sister had been back. She'd somehow gone back to Edmonton. I don't know why. And we lost each other. And I'm in Toronto, and I am feeling so independent. I have a job. I'm dancing. And she calls me from Bermuda and says, come out, work for Club Med. She was working for Club Med. Come in and work here as I do. And I said, no, I'm a dancer now. I remember saying, no, don't you know who I think I am? And eventually things, whatever, you have a bad day and you say, maybe I will go, geographical cure, as it is. You haven't figured out that wherever you go, there you are. But so off I go. And they had figured out that even though they didn't have a contract for me, I could play piano in the bar. The theater was right there. And our wonderful choreographer, Patty, something, a French lady, she was always looking for more help, more dancing positions to fill in, more performers. And I was a shoo-in. So that was my job. I didn't get paid. I was what's called au pair, which means you're working for free. And it's a contract that they give to people who come and take care of the children, maybe the hotel manager's children or whatever. And then you live in a beautiful place. They might pay you a little per diem, but you don't get paid. But I didn't mind. I'm 17 years old, and all I have to do is play piano and dance on stage. It was wonderful for 4 months. Anyway, and then my sister and I, oh, and a little tiny detail, by the way, Janet. I arrived in Bermuda, and I went to nobody was around. Some geos greeted me at the front door, and we came in. And I go to the hotel desk. I guess I'll just check in, tell them who I am. And Vanessa, my sister, she'll come out any minute now. There was no cell phones back then, so she didn't have an exact time or what have you. And they said she had gotten hurt mildly, and she had flown home the day before. Nice communication. Two idiot kids. So I'm there, and I go, well, that's okay, because José knows I'm coming. And he was the chef de village, French hotel manager. And they said, he got hurt in the show last night, and he flew to Paris, because he's French. Okay, to get his foot repaired. But then they said, but your voice is identical to your sister's, so we know so I don't as much look like her as our voices were the same. So we'll put you in a room until José comes back. Okay, so I didn't even know I was allowed to leave the room. I stay in the room, I go out, I play piano for an hour, go back into my room until they say, you know that you can hang out at the beach and enjoy the resort. And that was the beginning. And I was at Club Med for the next, I did stop for college. I went to college for 3 years in music theater performance to just improve my skills as a dancer choreographer. But then without intending to, because I worked in the business in Toronto for a while, but one too many waitressing jobs, I went back to Club Med as the choreographer. So I did that. Now the drinking, I had a rule. This is my aim. This is why I'm telling you this story. Every second night I would drink. Generally over that time, it worked for me. So one night happy, the other night, oh, maybe not so happy, go to bed early. One night happy. And that's the way it worked. And it tended to work for me for a while. And there was alcohol served at lunchtime. And it's a European company, and there's much more drinking on a regular, maybe not as much. It's funny about different countries and the whole drinking culture. It's still very ubiquitous. It's predominantly here in Canada, but it's a different kind of drinking. Yeah. And in the West, it's go out into the woods and drink till you pass out. So they don't so much do that in Europe, but yet they're drinking all day.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading the other day that France got a French husband, so I've seen it for myself. They actually consume more alcohol than most countries. I think they're number 3 or number 4. But as you say, they start at lunchtime, and it's moderate mostly. But us Brits and Americans and South Africans, certainly, we go out to get a result.
Yes, my brother-in-law. So my sister lives in France. Her daughter's actually here with me now. I'm hosting for a little while. Her daughters come here on a regular basis. She was in the business with me, and she ended up on the Club Med 2, which is a sailing ship, and met an officer in the 90s and married him and moved to France. So she's been there for all this time. And my mom put us in Francophone school here in Canada, so no English. So it was great. I have a French-English, I'm bilingual. And what I noticed is very interesting is Patrick, my brother-in-law, he collects wine. He has a beautiful wine cellar, and he doesn't drink it. And I've met a few French people like that. It's still part of the culture. You pair the wine, and yet some of them don't drink at all, some of them. But it is definitely part of the fabric of France is wine, definitely, and perhaps the champagne. And the other one is Louis Latour, the good brandy, is French. But anyway, so the French company, this company breeded alcoholics. I don't really use the term anymore, but at the time we were still using that term. And so coming out of this in my 30s, that was my explanation. Oh, it was my job. And so it was this breeding ground for all this drinking, and now I'll be fine. And for a while, I got bit by, if you want to call it that, a food obsession. I heard one of your guests talk about that really took her down. And I'm in my 50s now, and over my decades of drinking, there were times where I was going to AA. I've been going to AA on and off for all of this time, practically. I passed that 11-year statistic from when I first wanted to stop till now. I think I helped round out those years and make it so long, because I calculated that really trying to stop actively, I'm at about 19 years.
Wow.
So when people are trying and they're not getting it, I really am always wanting to say on our wonderful Zoom cafes and meetings and just out and about. I had to say out and about because I'm Canadian. But I really want to encourage them that keep at it, because I have a sobriety today that it doesn't look like any of the other sobrieties. And I'm also older and more mature, and I know a little bit more, but there's a freedom that does finally come. And in the other sobrieties that I've had through AA, on and off, and even abstinence, because I had a real obsession with being a dancer. You're obsessed with your body. There's no other way to put it. You're auditioning, and I would sometimes hear lose 10 pounds. I was in a show once where we had to get on a scale, and for every 3 pounds, you had to pay a fine. I don't know if they're still doing that. And I won't mention the production company and where it was, because I don't want to call anyone out, but it's probably not happening. Maybe it's happening more clandestine, but there's this obsession with, and I don't have the typical dancer body type. At least that's not a powerful thing that I've told myself my whole life. So I really try to keep this to a minimum. But I used to say that I put on weight easily. I don't say that anymore, because that's not helpful. Say things that help. Your self-talk should empower you and encourage you and make you better. But that's something that I lived with in my head. The bad roommate up there, always saying, well, you can't eat as much as other people. And there was a while where I was really having to stick to basically nothing. And then I would be so starving when the show would be over or the audition done. And I would eat my way to 30 pounds. And so I've done it with food. I've done it with and then we used to call ourselves addicts. Well, I'm an addictive personality. Again, that doesn't help. It doesn't help. So I don't use that term simply for the self-talk, but also from everything I've read, I'm deducing, as we're so much more than that, that's very reductive to say that I have an addictive personality, because that's like saying, when people say a truth that's a uniform for all humans, but they think it's only them, this happens all the time. And I've been hearing this. I hear it in people all the time, and it grates on me because it's not true. And I'm practicing a honesty today as part of my sobriety, because that's one of the first steps, and it's spreading into other areas of my life. So here's an example. When people say, I know a little bit of Spanish, I can understand it, but I can't speak it. That's just the way my brain works. And I'm here to tell you that's the way everybody's brain works when it comes to a language. Is first we understand it, and then we can speak it. So we might be at 50-20. We understand 50% and we can speak it to about 20% and so on. I have no idea what the ratio is, but so it's the same with a lot of these. Yes, we're unique. As we said before the recording, that we're all unique and we're all also the same.
Talk to me about when you first went to AA, Suzanna. When did you go to AA and why? How old were you about?
I don't remember, because I went to Alateen. My mom brought me to Alateen because she found great solace in Al-Anon, as she knew that we were suffering. That's not Al-Anon, that's not AA, but I remember the long staircase. And to tell you the truth, Janet, I think my first meeting in a 12-step program, other than Alateen as a support group for people who are either adult children of alcoholic, or ACOA, we call it, or have an alcoholic in our lives. The other group that I think was my first 12-step was OA. Overeaters Anonymous was my first 12-step, because I was living in Toronto before I went to Club Med and all the drinking. And then there was dabbling, and then there was the food, and then there was the drinking. And then they were always in tandem playing tennis with each other. When I was drinking, my inhibition would be down and I would eat, and so on. I know so many people relate to this, because when I could hear some of the people on your podcast and they're talking about this food and alcohol, it often goes together because of the dopamine hits and the sugar and all that. Yeah. But my first OA meetings, I used to attend them a lot in Toronto, and they didn't have them as much in the West, but I remember I would go sometimes twice a day. And I just was it's very much like AA in that I remember feeling like I could breathe. I was like, I can just be here. I don't have to do anything. I can just be a human being, not the human doing, having a very productive older sister and mother. I'm not like that. I'm actually quite still, and I make up for it with incessant talking to, this is my theory of the personality that I developed. I'm pretty sure I'm bang on with this because when I'm with them, I can feel myself speeding up. But I grew up, as you can imagine, with just the older sister and the mom before the next sibling came along, and to keep up with them. And my mom used to say and so this is how I felt in the A meeting, that I could be myself, because she used to say if she wanted to go somewhere and get something done, she'd take my sister. If she wanted to go somewhere and enjoy the trip, she'd take me. But I would wander and look. And in many ways, we come out of the womb with certain characteristics, perhaps that are unique to us, the nurture nature balance. So I felt that I could be me. I felt not just because of the subject matter that, oh, you all abuse food and you're obsessed in one way or another, no matter your shape on the outside, as we've discovered, it doesn't matter if you're fat, thin, or other, you can be obsessed with food. When I would say to people that I go to OA, they would automatically think, but why? You have a normal body size, because they would expect me to be either one or the other, very large or very small. But it's like, you have no idea. And my particular bulimia was exercise, which is, again, a smaller percentage. But what you do is you're in one, it's like you have two gears, go or stop. That's it. So you're go, lose all the weight, enormously productive, almost manic depressive. And now today it's called bipolar, where you're manic or you're depressed. And the in-between, balanced, as I spend most of my time now, I would rarely see that. Yeah. As for then AA, after Club Med, I was on the cruise ships for a while. I had a few other things in between. I was living in Miami after 12 or 15 years. Okay, let's get it straight. 1988 until 1999. Then I was in Miami, and I was HR for Club Med for all the choreographers, and it was quite a wonderful job. And the food was bad. I remember in Miami, the food was bad because I didn't have to perform anymore. And the drinking wasn't so bad. I don't think I was going to AA, though, because that happened a few times in my life where the food would be really bad. I'm going to AA. I was just a mess. I was just me, Janet. I was just me.
Was it one or the other, Suzanna, or was it where they mixed up?
Yes, it was usually, very good question. It was usually for some strange reason, for the most part, one or the other. Of course, we've all indulged where we've drank everything and eaten everything all in the same evening, or we have a pig out after a drunk, where you go home and you find the mess the next morning and go. I once was subletting an apartment in LA. My father lived in LA. I would visit him, but I got this one time, because I found myself, I was working on the cruise ships for a year and a half after the Club Med thing, after the HR thing in Miami. I went to the cruise ships and joined my sister. Actually, she was now fleet manager. She was my boss, but I was subletting an apartment, and this is embarrassing, but this is what this is for. I want to share that I've been there, and I had two things. I'd go, that was a drinking phase. I was drinking, and I'd rented a really hot car. I had, I don't know, a red Trans Am or something. At the time, I think it was called a Trans Am. It might have been a Corvette, but I decided, oh yeah, convertible or whatever. It's only an extra $100 a day. What's $100? And I made good money, spent it all. And I was subletting this apartment and feeling I was all that, and would go out. Well, next morning, so I go out, blackout. Next morning, there's a hamburger that I had cooked, or some kind of food, I don't remember. And it was on the inside. This is so messed up. It's on the inside cupboard of the bathroom cabinet. WTF. What was I doing? A piece of food there. And maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Years ago, because this cumulative drinking ends up being this completely wet brain. And I didn't know where the Corvette was. Or whatever. I think I remembered at the time what I was driving, but I don't remember where the actual vehicle was. And it was not mine. Oh my God. What a flippin' mess. yeah, and just being disgusted with myself and also being petrified. I remember being so scared of what could have happened and having to keep the
Yeah.
lights on. I remember that night just not being okay with myself. You want to just climb out of your skin. One time I had a contract in a small town in Alberta. And so I migrated over to sales. What does an actress out of work do who hates waitressing? Sales. So I was a loans officer or something for timeshare company, and I had a contract in a small town, and I had such a bad drinking episode with strangers. I had gone out to a well-known restaurant here called Earl's, and I had met some people, and we were doing shots of Goldschlager. It's that cinnamon drink with, it actually has little flecks of gold in it, and driving them home, thinking that was a good idea in my little blue sports car that I had. And while I'm driving, thinking, oh my God, I'm so wasted. Like usually when you're driving, I am admitting to it. It was many years ago. The statute of limitations has run out on it because it was like over 20 years ago. Okay, people, but I did. I drove, and I was so scared the next day that I had to leave the lights on the next night, which is such a weird reaction, but I couldn't even be. It's like when you turn off the lights, you get more into your thoughts, into
Yeah.
yourself. It's
Yeah.
a chemical thing that happens. And I couldn't. I had to keep the TV on and the lights on because I am not going to go inside my head. As we used to say in AA, do not go inside your head alone. It's a bad neighborhood, right? You don't want to be in there alone. I knew already this is a problem, but again, not admitting it. If I would smoke cannabis, it would get worse. It was like I was double drunk. One little pull, two pulls, and I don't know how people do it. So I've never been able to smoke cannabis, which is maybe a blessing. And then on I go. And eventually I end up in New York City. That was a big eating phase. I'm going to AA. My meeting was right where the towers were, down the two Twin Towers. I'm living in Tribeca. I was working at a place called LA Weight Loss, and I'm now a weight loss counselor, even though I was eating my face off. I might as well get the product for free because I need it because I'm eating my face off. And New York was spawned by actually a radio show that I was going to host. Someone saw me on the cruise ships. My job on board was I gave the shopping talks. So I was up on stage. It was recorded. I told people where to shop, and then I would beat them at the gangway. So it was public speaking. A real estate investor comes out of the crowd and says, oh, you should come to New York and I will bankroll you. And this is my idea. He was probably drunk at the time, and because you tend to attract the same. And oh yeah, I'd had enough with my job, and at the end of the contract, off I go. Once again, geographical cure, and I'm off, and I'm in New York City. I'm living in Tribeca, and that was quite a siege to find an apartment. 4 weeks sleeping on a couch of a friend's house in Queens to look for an apartment. And I did want to live in Manhattan. I wanted to do the dream. Oh, I've always wanted to live in New York, so let's do it. I did have a green card in case anybody's wondering how that happened. My father happened to be, I had said earlier, living in LA, and he'd gotten his citizenship. So boom, sponsorship. Anyway, and I am living in New York, going to AA. And the morning of the towers on September 11th, 2001, I don't go to the meeting that day. Just like there's thousands of people that they just, for whatever reason, skipped it. And the towers are above the Marriott Hotel. And that is where there's a whole shopping mall underneath. And the subway stop is right there. And it was filled with soot and debris if you were there. My AA meeting started at, I think, 7:30, I want to say, and went till 8:30. You yickety yak with the other members for a while. And then you head to, it was Tuesday mornings that I went only. Maybe I was off those days. I have no idea. But I didn't go. And I was working on September 11th in a different office than usual. Long story, but we'll just stick with the fact that I wasn't there at the subway station. I had skipped my meeting but was about 15 blocks away looking down the West Highway. And anyway, saw it go down and very soon left New York. The overall feeling in the place was much different, as you can appreciate. And I felt like an outsider. They were hurt. They were hurting, as my landlord would say. She was a New Yorker through. And so it was a spiritual thing that I felt like I needed to go home after that. It was enormous. because the whole world, and I always say, we watched it on TV that day, and I was just a few blocks away thinking that the whole city's going to crumble. I didn't know they grounded planes. I thought for sure that they were going to just start shooting. I don't know anything. I didn't know that they could even instantly ground planes. Like, all you know is that things are blowing up around you. And I remember, and we were stuck in our office tower, and then they let us leave around 5:30, and it was cars were crushed outside for blocks and blocks. And I just I was going to say something else, but how I reacted was I was totally numb. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I told people who were here in Edmonton, people who were over in Europe, it didn't really matter where you were physically. Clearly, if you were in front of the buildings and anything was happening and you were running, well, clearly that made a huge difference. But for any of us who were safe and in New York, I think that the whole world felt the same, which is shocked, scared, and all of that. So I learned an enormous amount for a little while, and then I shut down. As soon as I got back home that day, I had to show my ID to be let into where I lived because it was too close to the no-go zone. I just stayed, and my job was now kaput. I had been promoted, and actually my office was supposed to be opened that week. And our phone company, Verizon, had phoned on the 10th and said, or the 3rd or whatever it was, and said, we can't get the phones working on the date that we were supposed to. Oh yeah, September 10th, the office was supposed to open. So the 11th, I would have been on Wall Street in the new LA weight loss, brand new office, and it wasn't open that day. So it even goes deeper than just not going to the meeting. I was supposed to be working later that day, and I wasn't. I was in Soho. So I had no job to go to, so I just shut down, and I was just eating and watching TV, and I would do that a lot. And I think any overeaters can relate, that feeling of just, you want to, I remember my joke was, I just want to climb into the VCR. Yes, it was a VCR back then. Yes, I'm old. So was the comfort.
Yeah.
I don't know where
it's
the
the numbness,
comes from.
isn't it? Whether it's alcohol or food, we just want to be numb. And TV as well. The VCR keeps you numb as well.
And another thought I had that I must confess, if it were still working for me, I would be still doing it. This isn't some moral high ground that I'm sober and now I did it and then I know how, and I hope I can help others, but I don't know that I can. I have no secret. The truth is, it stopped working.
And when did it stop working? Can you remember?
Fundamentally, if one were to look on the outside, it probably stopped working like then 20 years ago, right from those years that I already knew it wasn't working because I was in AA in New York. Obviously, I didn't drink a drop the 6 months that I lived in Manhattan, or 8 months or whatever. So I already knew, but then went back to it. Really not working. It's been, and that's why I have a new freedom. It's been over the last probably 10 years that I've been raising these kids. So I went to AA in 2007. I had a good run. I had a year, then had a slip, and then had another 2 years, and had a few slips within the 2 years. So I almost ditched out that time. No, that time was 2 years. And then in 2014, I lost a business. So I was still in sales and I had my own business, but I was a proprietor. I wasn't proprietary. I was a distributor for one of those large direct sales companies. We do the home parties. And I was in a jewelry company. And they had an announcement. We were going to be on a company-wide phone call, December 1st, 2014. That wasn't rare. We were going to be on the phone call with all of North America. That was a bit rare. And I couldn't get a spot on the call. It wouldn't allow for it because there's so many people. Anyway, I heard within the hour that they were closing the company. And I had built quite a good business, like financial independence amount of business. Always coming soon. No, I still have to work really hard, but soon, that kind of money. And yeah, so it was all of a sudden gone. So I just watched Netflix, and back to the eating and Netflix. And I think there was drinking. It was all of it in 2015. And right in March, so this is December to March. If you watch Netflix and do little else for 4 months, look at your life around you. You'll see it. And I thought, this isn't working. And I got on the treadmill, but I was still drinking wine. And I had this crazy idea to run 5 miles every day, 7 days a week. I'm going to be 5 miles soon. I'm just flipping nuts.
Oh,
nothing. My whole life. Yes. Some of us can just admit it. But I'll admit it all day long that my brain, it does fire off idea after idea. And that's, fine, because when I'm in a creative bent, I like it. But I'm going to run 5 miles a day. And I did. So I running, drinking. And then after 2 months of that, I think maybe I should stop the drinking. I think the running would be easier. Can you imagine drinking a bottle of wine and running 5 miles? Oh my God, it's painful, but I did it. And then I was on a weight loss program with because I believed in those, because I used to work in the business. And anyway, so then I quit drinking, but I had the running. You see the little formula for disaster there. It wasn't the drinking, it was the running. Now I have to run 5 miles every day, or I missed 6 days in 17 months. That's insane. So I kept sober after 17 months of running, and I looked amazing, by the way. Like the abs.
I'm sure.
I did that part. Like I did like the very superficial, and I was strong, but I was sick. I was mentally ill, and I was physically injured. I had old injuries from all the years that I was dancing, and I also did a little bit of other things while I was at Club Med, water skiing, trapeze, flying, and accumulated these injuries in the wild, thrill-seeking craziness that was my life. So I couldn't run anymore. I was on a trip that I'd earned to Mexico. I was with my sister, and then I really had to run because you're in a bikini all day. I couldn't run anymore. It would hurt. I couldn't even walk. So I did it to myself. And I stayed sober 17 months. I'll never forget. I stayed sober from March 2015 until, oh no, because I started running in March, but I kept drinking. Let me get it. I'll get it. June 2015 until May 2018, almost 3 years going to AA. And I was cleaning the house one day. This is how innocent it comes back into your life. And a clean house and a nice glass of wine. That is a neural pathway got set up years ago. Anything like what we use the example of the sunset, anywhere beautiful, and a glass of wine. So people are coming over, anticipating a party. I feel and look great. I've got my makeup on, my hair done. You know what I mean? The house is clean, and someone had left this little. I'll finally swear. I said I won't swear on the podcast, but this little fucking orange cooler. They had left at my house at some party, and I thought, what harm could it do? And there I was, set up 5 years of drinking.
Oh.
Yeah. And I went back to Craig Beck. So all the way along in the times there, I was AA, but I knew that. So that's when it crept in that AA is maybe not working. Man, I've been going to these 12-step programs for so long, and I'm still in the mire. And now a couple of aphorisms not aphorisms, but examples of perhaps how it can feel when you're in the soup. And then I can talk about my finally throwing the book at it. Was one night, not that long ago, a year and a half ago maybe, I was in the middle of the night awake, as you are so often when you're drinking and having the crap sleep. I'm watching the iPad, and I can't find anything. And God knows what I was listening to or watching. I'd watch a lot of Mayday when I was drinking. The plane crashes, and I have figured out why. It's because I'm comfortable in my bed and there's a plane crash. So somehow by the comparison, I can feel some kind of comfort because I'm so destitute inside. But I'm being pulled that moment that I equally wanted to deepen my soul, drink and not drink. So what's left in the middle if I'm pulled like a tug of war? Nothing. And it was I'm being dramatic, but it was dramatic. It was like, I'm nothing. I'm done. This is not going to go on. I never was going to off myself because my kids and my husband, because of them, like I would never do that. But I understand if people do, if that makes sense. So that was a moment and I knew I would remember it. I thought, this is good. This is good. And I committed to memory so that during this year that I've not enjoyed, because I had some pretty shitty times during this year too, which I can share. And then, so Craig Beck, so I had read Craig Beck and had found some sobriety to the point that I would make my husband, who still drinks, my husband drinks, my circle of friends at the time still drank. Now I've limited my exposure to them, but I'd make him a margarita and I'd have a virgin one, but I couldn't use the same shaker. Like I couldn't just pour his and then put no alcohol in mine, I had to rinse it out because so much it was poison that I had been convinced by reading Craig Beck's really great book, Alcohol Lied to You. And also he's got, if you do the audible hypnosis that I was listening to at night, basically the hypnosis is telling you, you don't need this. It's poison. Why would you ever use it? And I am so going to be okay. And I don't really remember. And back to it, back again, reading the Quit Lit, and I'm going to be sober, and you're allowed to drink so that you can really feel what it's doing to you. And then finally, last summer, and there was a lot of other moments, and basically that's it in a nutshell. That's enough. Last summer, we went to a beautiful island, Vancouver Island, Victoria, Comox, and I have it down to a science by now. And every 2 days wasn't really my rule. I'd gone through the rule. My goodbye to alcohol letter is on your website, www.tribesober.com. And I put my rules there if anybody wants to see my rules, because you've probably said them to yourself if you're at all anywhere along the spectrum of either thinking about quitting or close to quitting, or maybe you've quit, and it's just good to keep them in mind. But I had all the rules for my drinking, and I was doing okay because I wasn't really enjoying it anymore, because I'd gotten older and my body was taking care of itself. And there's a point where I just can't have the third drink, because the second one, I'm already feeling a bit the negative effect. In a way, I had said to my family, I'd said to my mother, my body's gonna help get me out of this, because it's giving me such good feedback without having to go to blackout and without having to get hammered. But there's a voice inside of me, and it's subtle, and it's saying, you'd be better sober. You can think clearly. You know it. You already know it, because you already know yourself sober. You know you'd be better. So you can play this game all you want, but you'll be better. You'll be better. In the shower, we have a lot of thinking in the shower. I think it's because of the physical contact of the water that you're now in your body, and it lights up other parts of your brain. So you think, I will never drink again, happens a lot in the shower. Or the resolution, I will not drink tonight. It's in the shower. If you finally get in the shower by 2 o'clock or whatever after a big drunk. And by the way, I'd gotten drunk in March of 2022, and it was bad. So much. I didn't drink for 2 months with no resolution at all. I didn't say I won't drink for 2 months. I literally couldn't touch the stuff. It was so bad. It was a company party of my husband's. It was an open bar. And at the prices of alcohol in Canada, I was like, woo! Went for it. Terrible. Doing shots. I think it was fun. I have no idea. You'd have to ask the other people if they didn't black out.
Did you look as if you're having fun? We asked them.
Did it look fun? And my husband pretended he didn't know me. He goes, no, I'm not with them. When they had cut off the company, they'd say, no, you guys, you're all cut off. And then my husband's part of the company. So he comes up to the bar, and he's with and another guy and they're not drunk. They're probably a little bit tipsy, but they're not drunk. And he orders his drink. And then the bartender says, no, we've cut you off. And he goes, no, I'm not with them. So my husband disowned me, and so he should. And we left the car there that night. There's all these things in place so that I can, drink comfortably, not responsibly, but it's going to keep us drinking comfortably. So we've been programmed that you just set up your life to be able to drink, right? There's a lot of ways to do it. And then finally we went to Victoria, as I had said, and every day we were drinking. And yeah, of course I got hammered a couple times, but it was not bad. It was not ruining the trip or anything by any means. But there was one day where it was a beautiful day, and we're walking along the beach. I think we're in Campbell River after a day of fishing. We weren't fishing that day. And all I can think about is, hey, let's find a little restaurant and have a little this and have a little that and have my wine. I don't even see the beach. I don't even see. And that was pissing me off. I was like, it's so insidious. So how it creeps up to be your everything. Once again, like, you can hear how angry I am. And then you take it out on all kinds of things yourself. You take it out on people, and even when you're sober. So when people are having alcohol as a problem in this gray area drinking, they might not have had a drink for 2 days. They still have a serious mental problem because they know in their mind that it's everything. The romance is on strong. I'm planning. I'm going to go to the store. I looking forward to a drink at 5 o'clock when it's 10 in the morning. That's a problem.
Definitely.
Even if you don't get drunk, because there's a mental lineage that is taking, as so many people have said on your podcast, it's not the time of the drinking and the drunk and the hangover. It's all the wasted real estate up here between the ears of just thinking about it, the whole phenomenon. I had it, and it was a new habit. It was a new, and because of all the books, I had read more than that. I read Christy Coulter's book, Nothing Good Can Come From This.
Love that, yeah.
It's so subtle because she doesn't speak from the disease place. She speaks from the curiosity place of what would it be like if I just stopped drinking. And she didn't have an enormous problem, although she mentioned a few times where she had imbibed maybe a little bit too much, but it was just a culture with her work. I hope she doesn't mind me. She put it all in a book, so of course she doesn't mind.
Exactly.
And I've actually reached out to her and she answered me. And I'd read that 3 times. And I'd read Soberistas, the lady who wrote Soberistas, can't remember the name of the book, and those 2 wonderful ladies. I'd listened to that while I was cleaning, and it finally toppled. So keep going, people. Just listen, and it'll finally reach that tipping point where you're just enough, and you've had enough of the whole big A. And you heard me at the beginning, Janet, when you first met me, and I was like moving into activism, and I'd been sober like a month. I was like so pissed off at the whole long con. But then you realize, of course, your part in it as the year goes on. And one day, it was our anniversary, August 14th last year, and I had my half glass of wine because I had to. I couldn't have dinner without it because I was at the point where if it's there, I have to. And so all the choice is gone. And that pissed me off too. And I just knew. I said, that's it. And it came in quietly. It was so weird. It wasn't this big. I didn't tell anybody, didn't tell my husband I'd gone months before, so I didn't tell him anything. I just knew, and I had a quiet strength. And I've been building it in other areas of my life with my work. I was fired from a job in July, and that grew me up because I needed to be fired because I hated it. And it was money, but not enjoying the job. And there were some things going on that were untoward in this particular place. And I was calling them out and they fired me. And I thought, put your big girl panties on and go do what you love. And I didn't even know I was going to do this wellness life that I've incurred, which is with my coaching. And I have a wellness business too. And I didn't even know that I was going to do it. It literally came out of my mouth because it came from deep inside. So when I got fired, July 22nd, 2022, I called, we were going on this trip to Vancouver. I called the dog sitter and I said, hey, why don't we go on this walk? Because I was training her how I walk the dog because he's off leash and he's a big dog. And it's better that he get to know her so that when we're gone, he's okay. Can we go walking? And sure. And she's a healer and she's into wellness. And so she was the perfect person to be with at that time. And so we're walking and I said, I have to pursue my wellness business and get well in every way and integrate all of me. So I knew it. And then I went to the bottle return a few days, weeks, whatever later. And I knew that was that last bottle. And I said, I think I'm going to hold this back and not return it. And I wrote the date and I still have it with the date on it on my desk. It's quite ugly. Sometimes I want to chuck it because it's like when you're cleaning,
no, don't.
Like, ugh. But I'm like, no, keep it. And your tracker. So the first time I met you was an email. You emailed me back.
Oh.
So I was listening to Over the Influence, a lovely podcast, and they claim to be the biggest and whatever claims, and they were fun. And I looked at joining, and then Sharon Hartley, wonderful host, her energy matches mine in many ways. And in a funny way, I thought I need I don't know, it was an inner soul thing. I was like, I need a counter to my energy in the sober space, which is what my husband is, except he's not in this space with me yet because he still drinks. And he's never drunk with any kind of hang up, which used to piss me off. He could have a beer and leave it. And so I heard your voice when I put into Spotify one day, sober, and Tribe Sober. So I listened, and that's how I heard you. And the very first podcast, you talked about some physical tracker. And you had said, email me and I'll send you the PDF. So I
Oh,
emailed
and you
you, and
did,
you
and I
actually,
did.
and you did. And anyway, and in your response right away, you invited me to join the community. And I didn't right away. I listened to a couple more podcasts, and then you were absolutely right that this was going to be the last piece. And I said to my husband, for the price of a bottle of wine, I'm going to join this thing.
Yeah. Well,
It's
I'm
the price
so
of a
glad you
bottle of wine
did.
a month.
And
Yeah.
congratulations on your soberversary, which was recently, wasn't it? What date was it?
Actually, it's, yeah, I hope this isn't illegal, but it's in 4 days. But I
In four
thought
days.
in 4 days,
By,
I'm okay. I'm going to make it.
by the time this comes out. Yeah. What can we say? Talk to me about the benefits. If you had to pick 3 top benefits of sobriety, what would you focus on?
Self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
That would be number one. That needs no explanation because of the integrity and this honesty piece, that it's a foundation like a seed. If you don't start with the truth, every time you're taking that drink, somewhere in you, especially if you're on number 5 for the day or whatever, somewhere in you, you know that it's not good for you. And it's not popular to tell you that it's not good for you. It's not popular to be that blunt, but that would be the number one thing, is it gives you a fighting chance at an honest life. At least that's how I see it for me. You do you. The second thing, I knew you were going to ask this because you send the questions ahead of time, and there's so many that it's hard to get it down to 3. Definitely mornings. I'm a morning person, and you might as well write off your mornings if you're a heavy drinker, unless you're still up.
And then you're not much use anyway.
You're not much use anyway, unless you've got your 3rd or 4th wind or something, some crazy morning. But no, mornings, I love them. I get up early, I meditate, I go walk the dog, and just how the outside smells in the morning is, there's nothing like it. Evenings too, but mornings are really precious. And the creativity, I'm a creative, and it's there, full on, the flow of soul connectiveness, source, God, whatever you call it. If you don't have a faith, just that feeling that you're at one with nature, for me, is stronger in the morning. And it's probably stronger in the morning scientifically, like with the circadian rhythm just starting.
Yeah.
So then mornings, I post quite often on my wellness Facebook group. This will never get old. If you have a beautiful morning,
Yeah.
it never gets old. And then the other thing is my children, that they have a much better chance at a healthy perspective with their choices, because their mom was sober a lot of the time growing up. Because during those days where I was sober with AA, it was wonderful. AA was helping me at the time. And a little sidebar, I didn't want to belong. I think I told you that before, that I wanted my sobriety to belong to me, not to belong to any group. So that if I lost the group, I was still sober. That's just the way I see it. So I think my children are something, and I think I will definitely not only see it now in them, but I think it's something that will really be great later, because we have a great relationship. And yeah, so those are my top 3.
Wonderful. And last question, Suzanna. If someone's listening to this and they're really stuck in their drinking and they just don't know where to start, what would you suggest? What little
Just
thing?
open up to one person that you can trust. You know who they are. It might be someone that you've met recently. It doesn't have to be someone that you've known forever, because sometimes those are the people that, when it comes to this, that's not your people. I wouldn't open up to a sister, my mom. That just wasn't the right people to open up to about this. In my particular case, it was the Tribe Sober group that I could, at any point in any of we have a great chat group on WhatsApp. I'm telling your audience, obviously, you set it up. And I could sidebar with any one of them at any time. So having those resources, and I had said that there was hard times in the year, and it really comes back to this group, because on the 3rd month, you can find yourself in a dark place, or the 6th month, like you did when you founded Tried Sober. You needed a project. And see, I listen to all your podcasts, and I know your story. And people should go back and listen to your story. It's just so wonderful. And the Relapse Girl, Melissa, that's my favorite podcast. because that was me, 25 relapses, right? But on the third month, when I was really come to a head, I happened to be going to a sibling reunion in Toronto, and it was wonderful. I loved my sisters and my brother, but there was going to be drinking, and I used to drink with that group with my brother, and with the one sister drinks, and I was 3 months sober and hadn't lost a pound. That was another motivation to quit drinking as well. I'll lose weight. At least there's that. Nope, my body's hanging on to all the weight this time, even though I was exercising and not drinking. So that's been a new challenge post-menopause. But here it is. I talked to Lynette. I had my free coaching session, and then I did continue with her a bit. And she was able to say, it's okay for people to be wrong about you. Because my siblings and I had a big argument, and it was my own just being pissed off that I couldn't drink. Even though I said I was all at peace with it, and it came in subtly, and all those things I said, and I'm sitting on some rock meditating and everything's fine. No, it isn't. Not all the time. I still get visits. And that really was helpful to have the group, because before I left, I actually armed myself with some things that they had said. So I said, okay, I'm going to the sibling reunion. It's going to be exactly my third month. When I go right away, because it's a 24-hour thing, because they're all over the world, people were there for me. And I think that's the number one thing, is to, if it's not Tribe Sober, you have to open up, because you're as sick as your secrets. If you keep it a secret for too long, if I had kept it a secret when I got sober and I just stayed that way, there would have been an occasion where I haven't had told anybody anyway. So it doesn't look like I'm doing a 180. I don't have to save face, and back I go.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to be accountable. Yeah. And I love what you said, Suzanna, about you have to find your people, and you have to find your people for this, because, you know, your people in life are probably different than your people
I read a
on
funny
this
thing
journey.
On a Substack. I read a funny thing, Mia and the Sober Glow. Do you read that? Oh. It's really funny. She did a recap for her year, and I got interrupted when I was reading. But the very first thing in her recap of, 10 pro tips is the first one. It had me stop dead and say, ooh, this is going to be good. And I put my pen down and I was ready to read it. And then I think I got called away. But the title was Nobody Cares. And it's so true. And I don't mean that in a cold, mean way. But it's so minor for some people that don't have a problem with alcohol. People who are drinking and are deep in the lie, they don't care. Like, not really. Like, they love you. And okay, oh, you're finding happiness and peace. Good. But they don't really care the way you do. And the other day, oh my gosh, and here's the best example of how they don't care. We have these friends we've had for 20 years, and I'm not going to stop being friends with them just because they come over, they imbibe, and they drink, and they laugh. And we don't see them very often, and I've been friends with them for so long. And yeah, my husband is best friends with the gentleman. So we hang out sometimes. So they come over the other day. And the man, he's always drinking these fancy cocktails. He doesn't just pour a rum and Coke or have a wine. He's got, this latest thing that, of course, eliminates the taste of alcohol, so you can continue to lie to yourself. But he has this thing. I guess it tasted like root beer. Do you have root beer?
Yeah.
In South Africa? Yeah. So he pours it. He goes, here, taste this. And I just thought everybody knew that I was this big sober person. Like, it's even part of my business in some way as I'm going to move into this sober coaching eventually. I just thought everybody knew. I thought I was, don't you know who I think I am? Like, I'm this big sober person. I'm being interviewed on a podcast.
Yeah. I'm the center of the universe.
I'm the center of the universe in my sobriety. But he goes, here, taste this. And I go, no, I'm sober. And I said it with some indignance that he will get the message. And he's still going, no, you can barely taste the alcohol. And that's what he was trying to show me, is look how good they covered up. And he pushes it in front of my face again. Here, taste this. And his wife is right there. And I'm like, no, thank you. And I had to get over it. He didn't have to get over nothing. He's okay. And he goes outside because they were by the fire. And I was inside with the ladies. And it was so funny how I love that, because it really brought me down to earth and said, and then I read Mia's, or the day before, maybe I'd read it. And I thought, it is so true. They don't care. Yeah. And that's okay. Like, everybody everybody has agency. I have agency. You have agency. We have this, and you can do whatever you want within reason, within the law, with your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing about the tribe, isn't it? We do get each other. We understand each other, and we do care. But normal people They don't care. They don't
And you
get
have
it
to
as much as they
celebrate.
don't care. Yeah.
Exactly. So when they don't care, you can't take that to heart and say, oh, I guess it's not
No,
important. It's
no.
huge. Especially up here, mentally,
Mm,
you've
mm.
surrendered. Mentally, you're ready to go on without it. How you behave. That's why some of our tribe members, they're still drinking when they join, because they know something's amiss. They want to make a change. They want to see examples of it.
Yeah.
And proof. It's the bias. What's it called? Not the fading effect bias. The other one, when you're looking for confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. Yeah.
There, I said it. You're looking for that. And the tribe is a great source of that. So when you
Yeah.
have even your first 24 hours, it could be a dinner, and we'll celebrate it with you, because it's about now. You get sober on this moment. You don't get fit today on yesterday's workout. You get fit today on today's workout. And it's the same thing with my sobriety. And no matter what's going on, I am sober. Now I'm moving into my second year, because I always had a slip in the first year. And yeah, I'm excited. But I had a revelation, and I just wanted to mention it too. I'm glad I remembered. I have a vision for my future, and it's as a sober person. And I know that it's cautious in the beginning to say, I will never drink again, because the brain, trying to protect itself, and this friend that we think is our friend that we've had, will find a little bit of more fear, undue fear, with that statement that I will never drink again. Maybe it's too much. For me, though, with so many years of relapse, that it's a vision that has taken hold of my life, using my imagination and visualization of being a sober person, where I'll live, what it looks like. Manifestation, a surrendered manifestation, is something that's helpful for me. And I've shared it a little bit with the tribe, but I've done it cautiously, because if I say I have a vision that I will never drink again, and I have a vision like shedding skin, like a snake does when it sheds skin, because the same mind that came up with the problem is not the same mind that will fix it. We must be a new person. And so you will evolve into a person that perhaps doesn't even want to drink. Like, I want you to allow that to be a possibility. If we're taking SSRIs, I remember I've taken antidepressants. I know friends that have, and sometimes their doctors tell them, you'll be on this for the rest of your life. And I've said to a particular friend, do you think that's helpful? That you're going to be on this for this? It might be true, but wouldn't it be more powerful to say, to sit down and visualize a day where you're free? And it's the same thing with the sobriety. There could be a day where you're free of it, and go down that, because the wolf you feed will grow. And then it may happen. The timeline, it's not up to us, because there's just so much of life we don't have control over. But you can decide for today to be sober. But rather than say it's just for today, as I hear people say so cautiously, you are on that fine razor's edge when you're just working. So it's that, I was going to say just working with this moment. So it's that delicate balance with, yes, be in the moment, visualizing your future, and have times in your day where you can do some of that imagination work. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Suzanna. I shall stop with that.